Welcome to the Book Club Life. I am Jenny Snow, and I can't believe I get to sit here with Kate Angelo today. I have been a fan of yours ever since. So have you, listener, reader, fellow reader, have you ever been reeled in by a reel? Because I was totally reeled in by Kate Angelo's Instagram reel of her very first book, Driving Force. It was so cool. I'm going to link to it so you can go watch it. And I was like, I have to read that book. And I did, and I loved it.
Oh, good.
And I'm a huge fan of Susie May Warren and Sunrise. And so I've just been hooked on your books ever since.
Wow.
And I'm so impressed with you. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I am so blessed to actually know you and be with you. And I love all you do for authors, and you were just an amazing person. And getting to know you personally during our time here at ACFW and through the internet and everything has just been amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. So if you're new to the show, the way we do it is we ask book club questions inspired by your book or books.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull from more than one today. And then at the end, we'll do some just for fun questions.
Yes.
And I'm going to do a giveaway. So if you'd like to enter the giveaway, make sure you stick around to the end for details on that.
Awesome.
So my question for you is actually just a question to get to know you a little bit better. You came on the writing scene with a splash. You won the contest with Sunrise, and you got to publish with Lynette Eason and write a book with her. So you're already in your young author time, because it hasn't been that long that you've been publishing.
No.
You're already a Publishers Weekly bestseller.
Yes.
But I know that overnight successes are usually not really overnight. So can you tell us a little bit about your publishing journey, how you got into it, and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, I love this question because it's actually probably one of the first times that I've talked about it on a podcast. So you guys get to hear it first. But you know, I actually don't have, like, a lot of people are like, yeah, I was an overnight success, but it took me 10 years to get there, and I didn't necessarily have that journey. Okay. So I always loved writing. I always wanted to write. I thought I would write at some point. My husband and I did a nonfiction book together, and that's really great. And I was like, you know,
what is
like,
it called?
It's called Forsaken right now. Forsaken. It's a nonfiction. Okay. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so you can grab it and like get to know us like a lot more through that. And
really get to know you.
Yeah, really get to know us a lot. And it's kind of our journey and our testimony. And so So what happened with me is that I just really felt the Lord saying, do this, but I'm always hesitant to rush out and do something because I want to do it the very best. So what I did was prepare myself. So I watched videos, I listened to Jerry Jenkins teach, I read so many books, and I just like really thought, okay. And then I felt now's the time to start writing. And I kept seeing the Lord put in my heart just vision. It sounds really weird to say, like, you can just see these characters and you can hear what they're saying, and you know you need to write it down. And so I was like, I'm going to start writing. So then I checked out, like, what does it take to write? What do publishers do? And things like that. And then I found a local writing group. And one of my friends was like in Springfield, Missouri. Okay. So I live in Springfield, Missouri, near Branson. Everybody's like, I've never heard of Springfield, but Branson I know. So, which is funny because the population's like 1/10 of my city. But so anyway, we have my writing group. One of them was like well into this, like she knew all the authors, and she's just a reader first, and she was trying to work on her career, and she said, she sent me the Instagram post that Sunrise was doing, which was the audition for Lynette Eason. She's like, you should do this. And I was like, I'm not ready, and all this other stuff. And so I talked to my husband about it, and he's like, you should just like do it. Like just roll out the red carpet for God is something we say all the time, and see what he does. And just let him guide you down, like step on it and go. And I was like, all right. So unfortunately, she sent me that on October 29th, and it was due October 31st. Okay. So that meant you had to have your proposal, your story, your writing sample. You had to have all this stuff ready to put your best foot forward. So that was, I believe it was in 2019 or 2020 is when they did this. So
did you do that 2 day, did you get it done in 2 days? Oh my gosh. Wow.
I know. And somehow Lynette Eason called me and told me that I was picked to write the first book in that series.
Which is the top spot you want to be.
That's the top
people
spot
are
you want to
trying
be.
out the series. Let's just start with book one.
And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, we're sure. And I was like, all right.
So cool.
And so then a similar thing happened with the Love Inspired. I was like, I don't know if I really want to write a Love Inspired suspense book, but they seem really fun and I like them and, you know, I like to read them and things like that. And everyone else was kind of doing one. And so I was like, yeah, I'll enter this contest and see if I can do it. And
so you got into a contest with them too.
Yes,
that's
so
how
I got picked with that one. So sorry, I'm straightening up here. So I got picked with that too, and Emily Rodmell was the editor at the time, and she was Lynette Eason's editor.
Okay,
and she's like, I just pulled yours out of the stack. Like, you were one of the first ones we pulled out of the stack and set it aside to talk to you about this. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'll do this. And so, and then that was the Publishers Weekly. So my second book was the Publishers Weekly bestseller.
And which one was that?
That would be Hunting the Witness. Okay. Yeah.
So I am reading that one right now. You can see all these little marks. I almost never do paperbacks because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
But this one I can't put down, and I'm loving it.
That's so good. Yeah. So anyway, so it's a long story to say that last year at ACFW, I was thinking about that. I was like, you know, I started to write like in 2019, and then like by 2022, I think, 2023, I'm already a Publishers Weekly
bestseller. Very unusual. It's rare.
It is.
Yeah.
And I was at ACFW last year, and I was getting ready for like the gala night, and he's like, and the Lord just really spoke to me, and he said, you know, you're not a unicorn, you're actually a Job, because of my past and all of this trials that I went through that maybe it wasn't necessarily writing, but it was very much a Job story. So he was telling me that I'm restoring you doubly. And I'm doing it doubly fast. And so that really spoke to my heart.
Don't share that story, because actually my next question for you might bring up that story.
Okay.
So right now I am reading Fireline, actually on audio. So I never do this, but I'm reading your book right now on audio. I'm about halfway through. And I'm reading your paperback.
Two at the two books. That's when you've made it as an author, really.
Yes. So I was reading Fireline, and the dedication just stopped me. Let me read it to you. So your dedication was, "For God, who fills me daily with unimaginable peace and joy." And that just struck me, because I'm a Christian too, and the Lord is everything to me. And the world is in such a chaotic time right now. And honestly, even in the good old days, chaos still happens. People still have struggles.
Yeah.
And everybody needs peace and joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody needs the Lord, whether they know it or not. But I wanted to ask you, so why are you a Christian? How did you become a Christian? And what does that quote mean to you? Like, unpack it a little bit.
That's a really long, that's a really good question, a really long question. Because I kind of came out of, you know, foster care and trauma and things like that, that I write a lot of characters who, even though they know God, maybe they're not established in their faith, or they still have some sort of hurt or flaw that they just haven't let God heal in them yet. And so a lot of that comes out in my stories unintentionally, but I believe that, you know, that I was prepared ahead of time, like I said, through the trials of that. So so I didn't become a Christian until I was in my 20s. And it was sort of like I knew there was a God, but because of because of what I had gone through, I was like, if that's how God treats people, then I don't want any part of that. And I was one of those people. Now I kind of think, how could anybody think that? He's a loving God, and it's just a trial, it's just a tribulation, and he's using it. And so, but I kept just hearing his voice, like calling me and saying, like, you know, come and just like the woman at the well, in a way, to come and trust him.
Yeah.
And so I finally listened, and it was, the story I tell is that I went to Australia, and I was all the way on the other side of the world, and he said, you know, you can run, but you're always going to run right back into me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop running then and just sit with you. Wow. And that was when I really became a Christian. And so as far as the dedication, I always want to put that. I put it in every book, in the front of every book. And I sign on my books Romans 15:13, which is, you know, that God would fill you with unimaginable peace and joy through the Holy Spirit, through the power of the Holy Spirit. And to me, it's because it's not about happiness all the time.
Right.
Because, how can you be standing in, we're here in New Orleans right now. How could you be standing in the hurricane-ravaged home that you once had, or sitting on your roof in a flood or something, or devastation, or maybe, divorce, or your child committed suicide, or your parent did, or some such thing like that? How can you have unimaginable peace and joy? And yet somehow through the Lord, he can give that to you.
Right.
And it's not happiness, but it's definitely joy.
Yeah. The inner joy that passes understanding, where you don't know how you have it, but he's just cocooning you in his love and peace and joy as you walk through that.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So I want to do a quote from Fireline. So, okay, first of all, tell us a little bit about Fireline and what it's about before I do this.
Okay, so Fireline is one book in a series. I think they kind of stand alone pretty well. There's like a hanging thread of the bad guy that arcs the whole series, but they can be kind of read out of order, if you want to start there and be like, oh, I got to read all of them, which you will do that. Yes. So Fireline is a book about smoke jumpers, and the other books are about the hot shots in the first part of the series. And so I didn't know what a smoke jumper was. I'm not familiar with wildfires. I was not raised in the mountains where this happens all the time. Never been to Montana or Idaho. Well, I actually been to Idaho, but I've never been to Alaska or any place where this is really prominent. So it was really fun for me to research this. So this is a book about smoke jumper, and they are they're thrown into both fire danger from the wildfire that's headed toward the small town that they're trying to save, as well as one of the characters is in witness protection, and they have kind of come after him, found him, and they're ready to kill him. And so,
what's the abbreviation for that, and how do you say it?
The witness protection.
Okay, so it's WITSEC?
Yeah, WITSEC.
Okay, because it's funny.
Witness.
I didn't get it at first because I was doing the audio.
Yeah.
So I would have known if I had looked, but I thought they said wet sack, like I'm a wet sack. I was like, oh, he's really down on himself right now. And this is very interesting. Kate Angelo's inner dialogue of someone down on themselves.
Yeah. I might have to use that now. Okay, watch for that in the future where I say somebody's a wet sack. So I actually do put a lot of Easter eggs in my books, and I don't think a lot of people get to see them, but some people do, and they're like, I saw that Easter egg.
Yes, it's so little fun when you're like, oh.
Little inside things,
Okay, so the guy character, he's a smoke jumper, but he's really undercover from another line of dangerous work.
Yes.
And so anyways, so they do fight fires and put them out and save people. There was a quote that stood out to me that I thought was interesting, so I'm going to say it here. So he's talking to another character, or another character is talking to him, and there had been some woods that had a fire had just ran through it. And they stopped it, but they're looking at the trees, and he said, on the outside, all you see is charred bark. They've been through the fire, and they look dead. But take a pocket knife and peel back that burnt outer bark. There's life underneath. And that especially stood out to me. We were out on some land that had been burned like a month or two previously, but we were out camping on it.
Yeah.
And the places that had been burned were like so green already. They came back. So I wanted to ask you, can you tell about a time in your life where it felt like you were going through a fiery trial, that just fire burned through? How did you get through that hard time? How did you recover? And then how did it impact you, and what advice would you give to somebody who's saying, yeah, I'm in that right now?
Yeah. Like we kind of started to touch on that a little bit, I think. That quote, first of all, when I was writing it, it just, the Lord just, put that out. And I wasn't thinking of it. I wasn't planning it. It just came out. And so I had to go back and search and be like, is that right? Is that how this happens? Because like I said, is this even possible, or do they just die? And it really is. And so then later on, it really struck me, after the book was already done and published, and I'm listening to it again, for the first time, and reading it for the first time again, I'm like, yeah, that's such a great metaphor for life, because also the wildfires come multiple times in these places. Like, we had kind of talked a little bit about controlled burns and things, that sometimes they'll do a controlled burn to keep it from having a wildfire, but they do it in a way that it doesn't destroy the trees, so that it can still come back. It's not so burning so hot and so fast. So I believe that happens to us in our life multiple times. It could be you're 16 years old and your boyfriend just broke up with you, and that's your wildfire that you're dealing with. But you think that the inside of you is just dead and gone,
right?
But it's not. That's just that one layer that the Lord is using to build that wisdom and things like that. And I get the image of when a tree is cut down and you see all those rings, I get the image of like, that's every wildfire that you've kind of gone through, if that makes sense. And good. So there's like all these little things in this short book that were just like good nuggets like that. And so for me, there was a lot of those wildfires. Like I touched on, I lived in Houston, Texas for a long time, not in a safe place, not in a great neighborhood. My parents were neglectful, and then there was abuse and different things like that went on. And then I moved to Missouri. When I went to Missouri, I was taken into foster care. And then
How old were you?
I was probably about, I feel like I was 13 or 14-ish, and that's a thing with children who are going through this trauma like that age doesn't really mean a lot to you. Like, you can't really pinpoint that, or you can't pinpoint memories like, well, I was exactly this years old when this happened. Right. So anyway, I ended up, so that's a wildfire, right? Like every day is a wildfire whenever you're going through trauma, and then you go into foster care. And then because I was a teenager, my mom ended up like moving back to Texas and leaving me there. And so then I was just abandoned by myself in this state, away from all where I had no family. I just had friends, and I was in foster care. And so that's a wildfire in itself. And then the foster family I was living with was losing their license. And so my caseworker was like, hey, so the short story of this is my sister, who's my foster sister, she was like, hey, do you want to like go hang out? And I said, I can. I got to go see my caseworker. And she's like, well, I'll drive you over there, and then we'll go hang out afterwards. And so she's standing there listening to my caseworker say, we've lost your foster family, can't keep you anymore. We don't have any homes in your small town. We're going to have to move you to a bigger city, to Springfield, where I live now. And that's devastating. You're in high school, you're like in sports, you have a job, you have friends, and you're going to move to like something else that you're just not ready for. And she just said, well, I mean, like, she's an only child, and she's like, we have a spare room, why can't she come live with us? And so that was like the beginning of her kind of being my sister, and her parents becoming my parents.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So also in the dedication, you did mention your parents, and I had wondered if you were adopted. In fact, I was like, are you adopted? Like, what? I had no idea about that. Does that impact your writing?
I think it does. Some of the books I have coming out in the future are, I really wanted to explore what it's like for the kids who were like me, and like, that were like me, but also not like me. So my older brother, for example, raised in the same house, same trauma, but had a whole different outcome. Okay. Same thing with my sister and my other sister and my other brothers and all these other things. And we all had different outcomes. And so I wanted to kind of explore that with the characters and then some who are like me. Like, what happens when you know there's a God, but you don't want to give up to him what you should. Right. Or even if you are a Christian, because you've given your heart over to him, but you sort of kind of go the worldly way afterward.
Like, I know I shouldn't do it, but I'm just going to anyway.
So getting the opportunity to explore those things, and maybe not even resolve it for them, but being like, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should return back to God, but not necessarily resolving it in this big, like, happily ever after kind of way, because it's still a journey.
Yes.
Because when you turn your life over to Christ, then I feel like the enemy is like, oh my gosh, I just lost this battle over here, and people are like, well, it's harder when you're a Christian. Yeah, because the enemy doesn't need to fight for something he's already won.
Right.
And so he's fighting for you because he's losing you.
Right.
And so that's kind of that, that's kind of why we have our faith is tried and tested and burned and made new again and again and again. Yeah. So it's just, like we said, learning peace through that. So,
that's really good.
That's good.
So I'm releasing this interview in February. You mentioned your husband and your dedication as well, and all your stories have a lot of action. They're very fast-paced, very turn the page, but also really good love story.
Yeah.
So would you share with us your own personal love story with your husband?
Oh, our own personal love story. I love it.
And then also, what made you think, I love you, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, not just, I like you, you're pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that question right there. Oh gosh, that's even the better question, I think. When I meet somebody new, by the way, I try to ask them, like, when was the moment that the Lord really impacted you? Or like, how did Jesus change your life? Like, show me that turn. Like, I want to know that about somebody, Yeah. And so so my husband and I had both been previously married, and so we were both single parents, and I was the older single person running our singles group of college-age kids for the most part.
Okay.
And he.
And about how old were you?
I was, ages,
Sorry,
right?
asking another age question.
I know, ages. In my mid-20s, I would say, maybe like mid to late 20, maybe like 26 or something like that, and everybody else is 23, 24. And so so he was leading like a divorce care ministry at his church, and he was like, I'm done. He's a little older than I am, and so he was like, I'm done with this, and I'm ready to like maybe see what you're doing with the singles group, so I can kind of see what you're doing, and I can do that at my church. And I said, well, what we did was we would go over to a married couple's house, and we would talk to them about their marriage as singles, and we would have a dinner there.
I don't know if that's a common thing to do for singles groups. Yeah. So that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, they feed you, and they talk to you about like the realities of marriage and other kinds of things.
Were you all at the same church?
So no, we were at separate churches.
And then how did he even know you?
He just called some churches and said, do you have singles groups, and like what are you doing for your young adults and your singles, because he was just interested in seeing what other people were doing, so he could start that at his church because they didn't have one. And so I told him about that, and then I said we meet weekly, and then we also do stuff on the weekends, and we try to do like a trip together and once a year.
So he wasn't really calling all the singles groups to see
who's single, who's running this group. No. Or maybe he was, and I just don't know that. No, I don't think he was. But no. But he was really looking, because he knew he wanted to do ministry work, and he was just maybe hadn't quite found exactly what he was supposed to be doing. And so he called the church, and they were like, we'll call her. And so I was like, well, we're doing this weekend, like come over and meet us. And so he came over, and we met for the first time, and then I kept inviting him to come back and do more things. And slowly we built a friendship. And I had said, I don't really want to date anybody, but if you want to be friends and we want to like...
And you already had kids at that point?
Yeah.
So how old were your kids?
Oh, more age numbers. I think when
or
we...
just generalities?
Yeah, I think when we got... they were all under 10, so
how
we
many
have
did you
4.
Have?
So I have 2, he has 2, and then we've adopted our daughter.
So you had 2 kids at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he had
so
his
that's
2.
why probably you were like, I'm not looking for that. I'm just going to be a mom to my kids.
Yeah, and just really like... Maybe I'm open to getting remarried sometime, but I'm more open to like letting the Lord heal my heart. And I wasn't a Christian before I got divorced either. So it was like that happened after. And so anyway, so he hung out with me a lot, and it was like, we started to like each other, and we wanted to date and everything, but we were kind of just not really sure we were quite ready to get married, and I wasn't sure if I really was like necessarily 100% in love, because I was still kind of scared, getting involved with someone again, and then to be with somebody who already had children, and I already had children. And honestly, I don't really say this a lot, but I'll tell your listeners privately here that publicly, very privately, right? No, that I had cancer, and I was unable to have children.
Oh
and so I was terrified of marrying somebody who didn't have children, who might want children, or somebody who wanted more children. And he didn't say either way. I just had it was just like this thing inside of me that was like
a fear.
Maybe I might never get married again because somebody would want more children, and I won't be able to do that. And so, so anyway, so we had so we had talked about that a little bit, but, never really came up. But anyway, so I told him a long time ago, like, my testimony of like how the Lord found me and how I was a new believer. And then I told him this story about how the first time I really went to church as a adult who was really seeking the Lord. So I've been to church a lot of times, but the first time I went as somebody who was seeking the Lord, I realized I did not know the Bible. So here I am, an American in the church with an internet, with Bibles in every hotel room and things like that.
Right.
And I did not know the Bible. And I said, I was sitting there and the pastor was like, this happened, and then there was Joseph, and everybody knows the story about Joseph, so I'm going to move on. And he moved on, and meanwhile, I'm looking in my Bible for the book of Joseph so I can quickly read the story.
Yeah,
and
there is no book of
Joseph, right? And so I'm telling Jerry this story. And so he decided for Christmas that he came over and he got me a gift. And the gift was the Bible on CD, because I used to drive back and forth from my home to St. Louis, which is about 4 hours. I worked remotely for the most part, and I would go to the office like 2 days every month or something like that. And he's like, you can listen to the Bible like in your car on your way to work, or this time and that time.
Sweet.
Yeah, it is so sweet. And it was that in that moment that I knew that he cared more about my heart and my spirit.
Yeah.
And like, really like washing you with the water of the word, like a husband is supposed to do. And that made me fall in love with him. I mean, it really, like, all right, I'm in love, let's get married here.
Yeah.
So maybe not that quick, but he is definitely the more romantic one in our relationship, and very thoughtful with his gift givings and things like that. So
definitely a very thoughtful gesture.
Right.
Yes.
So.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So we are going to move now to our just for fun questions.
Yay.
Okay. So it's February. What is the perfect Valentine's gift?
Oh, man.
We all
want
want books.
Said
That's what
Bible,
we really want, right?
Books. I know it's supposed to be the time of romance, but man, for me, just spending time together for sure. But I mean, I'm fine if it's just, again, I am not the romantic one, you guys. I am so not the romantic one. My husband has done like dinners where the flowers are already there and like big things and stuff like that. And I'm like, I would have been fine in my pajama pants watching Netflix in bed for like 3 hours. So for me, it's really just like that intimate time of just being together. Yeah. And not have to do anything big. I don't even need a card. I'm like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah.
Although we do give each other cards sometimes, but we even tell each other, like, just get me this for Christmas. I'll order this, or will you go order that?
Yeah.
And it'll be from me.
It'll be from me, yeah. I'm getting this for Mother's Day. I know it's not super romantic, but, I would rather have a handwritten note.
Yeah, if it works for you.
Right.
And it's what you guys...
Serve the other person.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Favorite dessert?
Favorite dessert, ice cream all the way, all the time.
What flavor?
Usually, it just depends. Usually it'll be chocolate, but we have Andes. Do you guys have Andes? Have you ever been to Andes?
Just Andes Mints. But...
Oh, no. There's
Andes
frozen custard.
Yes, we do. We do.
So Andes frozen custard has it's called the cherry chip concrete. And so it's cherries, but it's the hard shell chocolate that's mixed up in it. So it's kind of a little crunchy, and that's my favorite. So vanilla ice cream, chocolate, and the cherries.
Okay.
That's my favorite.
That's unique. So if you're reading a Kate Angelo book and you want to
get Andes while you're doing it.
Totally get the Angelo experience.
Yeah. So.
An author I love is blank because blank.
Oh, goodness. Wow. It'd be a cop-out to say Lynette Eason, right? Can I say an author I love is Colleen Coble, because she really likes to layer in a lot into her characters. And I think about that because she was one of the first Christian fiction authors I ever read. And I was like, oh, it's really good. Like, I wasn't expecting Christian authors to write well, I guess. I don't know why, but it was intriguing, and of course, like most people, I read the Rock Harbor series first, fell in love with the Rock Harbor series, and ever since then, I feel like she's just great at the romantic suspense thing.
She is.
So
She is.
I'm
I
telling
actually
stories.
got to interview her. I think it was in November. I'll link it in the show notes. It's actually today, but I'm videotaping the whole season this weekend,
Yeah.
which I also just want to say thank you. I'm rooming with Kate. I emailed her and said, hey, I'm on a low budget. Do you want somebody on your couch? And she said, yeah, come on. So this
Yes.
season is brought to you by kateangelo.com.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would have still had a season, but it
Yeah.
would have been at home in my living room, one at a time, once a month, and not nearly as fun as
Yeah.
seeing Kate in
And
person.
meeting all these authors in person
Yes.
and being here. Yeah, that's
Yes.
so great.
So if you ever get a chance to go to either the reader event that ACFW puts on
Yeah.
or the conference if you're interested in writing.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to ask you one more question. I guess
Yeah.
it's not exactly just for fun, but I know we have writers that watch.
Yeah.
What is your advice for somebody who is trying to be an author and just kind of in the middle of the mess and not really sure what's some good advice maybe that somebody gave you that was helpful in your writing or that you read because you really did your research?
Yeah, I did do a lot of research. I know a lot of people say read because you really do need to read, but you also need to read with an eye for what is making this work. The other thing is you have to be like pliable, like malleable, and a lot of authors aren't because they get it in their head that they've seen. And I'm this way a little bit too. I'm really guilty of it, but you have to allow people, not all the people, but some really people that you trust. Like if you love my work and you are like, I'm trying to write, can you help me? I would try. I mean, I might be like, I'm really on deadline and I'm melting over here. Can I do this in a few minutes? But most of us will try to help because we want more light out in the world. I want more good Christian books out in the world. And so I feel like we would all love to try to help someone that way. And so, but you have to be willing to receive the feedback and know that they probably are telling you what they have been told, what a publisher rejected them on, or what an editor has like dinged us on, like the little dings that we get all the time. And so being that malleable, like maybe, I'm seeing it this way, either they're not understanding what I want to do or it just doesn't work for the genre, and trust that publishers and editors and agents know what sells and what doesn't sell, and so you can say, no, I have something new and different, and it's all new and different, and they can say, well, we can't really sell that, and you might just might be like, okay, so it's not ready. Like the book the book of my heart, everybody has a book of their heart, I'm not letting it go. I mean, I'm not writing it until I know that I'm ready to sell it, to do it justice. The way. Like I'm not going to put my first book that I ever wrote out there because it's the one the Lord gave me. It's the book of my heart, that it's so precious that I want to protect it and let it get mature and then go back and make it perfect.
Yeah. Well, while we're all waiting for that book of her heart, these are pretty good. These are really good. So I love all your books.
Yes, thank you.
What is coming out next for you? So this is airing in February. So tell us about what else we can look forward to.
So as we're sitting here, I have turned in a manuscript for Ravel, and it's an exciting new series. So you'll get
and is this your first time being published with Ravel?
With Ravel,
That's awesome.
So I'm debuting with Ravel Publishing. Very, very excited about my editor. I'm very excited about the story and the series and the way I ended it. I'm like, please don't hate me whenever you read the ending that might be kind of a cliffhanger ending to the next book.
Okay.
But not really, but it is, but it isn't. So we'll see what happens in editing. By the time that you are watching this or hearing this, I'll probably have a title for the book. So go subscribe so that I can give you the title and the cover and you can watch it.
Where can they subscribe?
So on kateangelo.com, you can subscribe to my newsletter there. You get a free story. I'm trying to freshen up the free story that you get like every 6 months to a year-ish that way. I know some people don't even read them. They just get them and they don't read them, and I'm one of those people too. But you'll get information on the pet lion that I had as a child.
Okay. Yes, I remember seeing that.
Yes.
I saw it somewhere, but I was like, I'm going to have to ask about this. But we're not going to do it here because you have to go subscribe, and then you'll get the story.
Yeah.
And so Kate, thank you so much for being on the Book Club Live.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Yes,
I love it.
Pleasure.
Great job.
All right, we'll go enter the giveaway and enjoy some Kate Angelo writing. Bye.
Bye.